It's April 13th, 2015, Owen Sound Council meeting. We apologize for starting a little bit late. Council's been down in camera since 4 this afternoon, and we kind of got delayed with some shenanigans, as you might be able to see. If you're watching at home and you want to follow our agenda, go to owensound.ca on the World Wide Web. Under that, hit where you want to live. Under that, look for council. That opens up another box, council minutes and agendas, and then 2015 and today's date, and that will get you through to today's meeting so you can read along. I believe we are starting with a faith blessing provided by Pastor Tina Drysdale. There we are. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to open tonight's meeting in prayer. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I invite your presence here in this room tonight. I pray for Mayor Body and all of the City Council members. I pray that you would grant them wisdom and insight, discernment and good judgment as they make decisions concerning the people of Owen Sound. I pray that you would give this council strategies and plans to help make Owen Sound a place where we want to live, a place of joy, a place of peace, a place of community. I ask all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Any additional items on tonight's? Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few additional items. One is regarding specialized transit, one is regarding downtown storefronts, and a third regarding heat in some of the Bayshore rooms.
I've been at one of those meetings. Others? Councillor Lemon.
Yes, Your Worship, I have a question about the BCK property.
Okay, starting spring early. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to speak about the Grey Bruce Youth Film Festival, the Food Entrepreneurs Program at Georgian College, and the county building expansion project.
Oh, okay. And any others down here? Mr. Becking.
Worship, two items related to the frozen water services. Firstly, an update, and second, I'm just following up on a request from council with respect to options for provincial funding.
Great, thank you. And I think that covers them. Oh, Madam Clerk, none? We're okay, good. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Anyone? None indicated. Confirmation of minutes from March 30th, 2015.
Moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 30th, 2015, as printed, be adopted.
Great. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next is number 7, resolution moving council into committee of the whole.
Moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Great. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now we're in committee of the whole. Number 8, public meetings. I don't believe there's any public meetings. Number 9, this is where it gets fun. Depositions. Special night tonight. We're recognizing the Volunteer of the Year Award winners. I'm going to head down to the other podium. I wonder if Councillor McManaman, as Chair of Parks and Rec Advisory, wishes to come and say a few words. He doesn't. I'm actually teasing because Councillor McManaman didn't know that he was supposed to say a few words, so I'm just teasing him, letting him off the hook. So this is a fun event that happens every year, and obviously our city is so dependent on volunteers, and it's fun to get the opportunity as a councillor to recognize people that have done so much. So I start off with the first one. We're here this evening to celebrate the work of volunteers in the city of Owen Sound. This evening is about recognizing the efforts and achievements, of those who dedicate their time and ability to helping others. Volunteers are the backbone of many organizations. They are giving in their time and labor and expect very little in return. Volunteers are people from all walks of life, all ages and stages. What they have in common is a desire to make a difference in their community and in their own life by giving of their time and expertise. These individuals we are honoring tonight exemplify these traits. They should be commended for their vital contribution to the vibrancy, diversity, and strength of our community. Our first Volunteer of the Year award tonight is, to me, Mrs. Ann Kelly. Mrs. Kelly, or Ann, I've known her since I was so young. Ann was nominated by Bernice Ackerman of Owen Sound, who felt she was a deserving volunteer and should be recognized for her contributions. I would like to ask Mrs. Ann Kelly to come forward and receive her award. Ann has been an active volunteer in the city of Owen Sound. I'm amazed at this number because I know it's not accurate. Ann has been an active volunteer in this city for over 25 years. 50? 60?
You're getting close.
Since you're a kid, so
Since
about
I was a
60.
girl,
So about
yes.
60. Some were very long terms, others short terms. Ann was a fundamental part of the Festival of Northern Lights for many years. She served as chair of the festival from 1995 to 2000, and again from 2006 to 2009. Ann was responsible for many milestone events, including the festival's Millennium Family Olympics and the festival's 20th year celebration. Without her involvement, the festival would not have been sustainable for so long. Ann is an honorary Kiwanian, earning that title due to her commitment to club endeavors over the past 25 years, and is also the Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound historian. Kiwanis Club President Paul Stryma says, Ann is always the go-to girl for any fundraising endeavor and cause that needs a boost. She was a driving force behind the Kiwanis Celebration auction. It is Ann that ensured that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. She is not one to sit back, but rather takes action. You can't say no to Ann. Other organizations where Ann has volunteered include Citizens on Patrol co-founder and volunteer, Community Waterfront Heritage Center, Kings Farm Ball Team, Rotary Youth Camp, Junior B Grays Hockey Team, I apologize for my sweater, Golden K Seniors Kiwanis Club, Red Cross Disaster and Welfare Chair, Owen Sound's Sesquicentennial Celebration Committee, Owen Sound's Regional Hospital Foundation Committee, Gifts Committee MRI Campaign, VON, CGIT, and from my memory, lots of work around the church when we were little kids with choirs and things. Ann received the June Caldwell Outstanding Achievement Award, which only 10 are awarded across Ontario per year. Most amazing and heartwarming of all was Ann and Alan's, Mr. Kelly's anonymous visits to needy families as Mr. and Mrs. Claus. They wrapped gifts of toys and clothing, have brought happiness to so many underprivileged children. Ann is continuing this wonderful caring endeavor. Ann's nominator, Bernice Ackerman, says any organization in this city that Ann has been involved with has benefited from her commitment, organizational abilities, and her amazing fundraising capacity. Her love and pride of the city, her selfless giving personality is appreciated so much by all organizations over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Ann Kelly as a very deserving recipient of the city's Volunteer of the Year Award.
Thank you very much. Since 1860, 6 generations of my family have called Owen Sound home. I think that speaks myriads about the love and caring that we have as a family for this city. I would like to thank council for my recognition. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Bernice Ackerman. I would like to thank my family and friends who are here in support of me this evening, with a special thank you to my granddaughter who's here from British Columbia and is leaving tomorrow morning. It's wonderful to have her here. And my final conclusion, I'm sure the mayor has lost a bet, but I'll still say, go attack, go. Thank you.
Congratulations again. Our next Volunteer of the Year award recipient is Eugenia Ron. I'd ask Eugenia to come forward and receive her award. Eugenia was nominated by Chantal Nickel on behalf of the Quota International of Owen Sound. Those who have had the privilege of knowing or volunteering with Eugenia say she impacts the lives of every person she meets with her gentle smile, calm demeanor, and her witty sense of humor. Eugenia has held the position of Secretary, Treasurer, President-elect, and President from 2002 to 2005. Presently, she is Treasurer and has held this position for the last 4 years. She is always willing to lend a hand and has served on many committees and participated in many fundraising projects, such as the Christmas gift wrap, Tour of the Homes, Yellow Ribbon Campaign, Hottest Yard Sale Under the Sun, roast beef dinners, and barbecue fundraiser, to name a few. Eugenia is active in attending conferences, conventions, and area meetings across Canada. In the year 2000, she received the humbling honor of being named District 18 Volunteer of the Year from Quota International, which recognizes outstanding service for a member of each of its districts. Eugenia also volunteers for the following organizations: CGIT Leader, Sunday School Superintendent at the former Division Street United Church, Sydenham Sportsmen Association, Heart and Stroke Foundation, Grey Bruce Regional Health Center, Brain Injury Association of Grey Bruce. Eugenia has walked for Alzheimer's Walks for Memories for the last 5 years and has encouraged her 2 youngest grandchildren, ages 6 and 7, to participate, instilling the value and the importance of caring for others and volunteering. Owen Sound's motto is "Where you want to live." Eugenia embodies this in her love for her community. Her spirit, kindness, passion to help others are what makes her a very deserving recipient of the city's Volunteer of the Year award. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Eugenia Ron as a most worthy recipient of the Owen Sound's Volunteer of the Year award. Congratulations.
Sorry. Excuse me. Thank you to the Recreation and Parks Selection Committee for choosing me as a recipient for Volunteer of the Year Award. I am sure this task is not easy. I would like to thank Quota International of Owen Sound for nominating me. I appreciate your support in all I do. This is a very special honor for me, and I know there are many others in Owen Sound that are deserving of this recognition. I would like to say a sincere thank you to all of the volunteers in Owen Sound and area who help the groups and organizations in the city run so well and accomplish so much. It is my pleasure to work with so many of you, and it is my pleasure to share this with Barb and Ann. Thank you.
Our final Volunteer of the Year award recipient is Barbara Olmsted. I would ask Barb to come forward to receive her award. Barb was nominated by Carol Smith on behalf of the Grey Bruce Health Services for her over 45 years of volunteer service. Barb's service and positive attitude have been invaluable to the Grey Bruce Health Services, in particular her involvement with the hospital auxiliary. Barb has held a number of leadership positions within the hospital auxiliary, including the positions of Vice President, President, and Governor of the gift shop. The hospital auxiliary gift shop not only provides a source of fundraising, but also as a service to patients, visitors, and staff. Barb has been involved in raising over $420,000 from operation of the gift shop during the last 5 years. The money raised was donated to the hospital for capital equipment. Barb manages all the day-to-day operations of the gift shop, including purchasing, inventory control and pricing, merchandising, and training of 30 volunteers. Her leadership has been instrumental in gift shop becoming a small, profitable business for the hospital auxiliary. Barb's volunteer time averages between 1,000 and 1,500 hours per year, which equates to almost 125 hours per month. Her volunteer services is almost equal to that of a full-time employee, and yet she does it as a volunteer without seeking any recognition. Barb received the following recognition for her long-time volunteer service with the Grey Bruce Health Services. Provincial Volunteer Service Award for 40 years of service, Grey Bruce Health Services Volunteer Service Award for 45 years of service, Hospital Auxiliary Association Lifetime Award of Ontario, Grey Bruce Health Services Auxiliary Life Member. Barbara's remarkable energy and commitment are an inspiration to all of those who work with or around her. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Barbara Olmsted as a very deserving recipient of this year's Volunteer of the Year.
I think Mayor Boddy covered my whole speech. I really like volunteering at the Grey Bruce Health Services. It is a fabulous hospital. I love spending my time with the volunteers, the staff, the patients, and the visitors. It really is a rewarding experience. The auxiliary is very hard at work to raise money at all times to turn it over to the Grey Bruce Health Services so they can buy capital equipment. Also, I think we're very interested in helping people. Any way, any place, any time. It's almost as important helping people and being of assistance as earning money. I'm a very long-term Owen Sound person, been here all my life. So I know most of the councilors and the people here tonight, so I'm saying a sincere thank you for this honor. It's very, very nice. I want a special thank you to Carol Smith for nominating me for this award. Thank you to everyone.
Congratulations to the three of you. On behalf of the community, thanks to you, and thanks to all volunteers that help our city help make it tick. Thank you. Ouch. Do you want to? Yeah, just as everyone leaves, we'll take a break, or I can maybe talk about this hockey sweater that I've got on for anyone that can hear me. As council knows, I lost a bet with the mayor of Guelph over the hockey series. I was pretty sure that the attack would put out Guelph. As a result, I get to wear the Guelph hockey jersey here tonight. And I had to share a good case of Canadian product, or good case of Canadian product, Grey County product, Killannon, which we are arranging to get shipped down to the mayor of Guelph. Next year, I'm pretty sure that we'll taste their product and get it sent back. Just as a note, I borrowed this sweater from Councillor O'Leary, whose son Mark played for Guelph for 2 years. And you'll notice the assistant captain on it, so that makes it kind of special for me to be able to put on tonight. If we can move on, I think we're a public question period. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Correspondence at 11A, correspondence received from the Gray Home Builders and Trade Association. Table 9? Go ahead, Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the receipt of this correspondence.
And you're saying just 12A for now, doing them separate? Okay. 11A, sorry, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, so we've received that. 11B is correspondence from Scott Wilson from the Blue Water Curling Club. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to put a motion forward that staff provide a report to council on either staff or the advisory committee. I don't know which is best, but if they could provide a report to council on the request from the Blue Water Curling Club regarding municipal tax levies.
So the request is from the Blue Water Curling Club asking that they be exempt from the paying of taxes, is basically the letter. And the motion is to ask staff to write a report, provide us with a report on that. Discussion? Comments? Oh, sorry, Scott? Or Councillor Gregg?
I just am lenient to have staff tie up time on a report here if I'm just not sure under the budget situation we find ourselves if we'd be reluctant to alter the levy. So I'm just wondering if maybe we're forcing some extra work if we already know the answer, but I'd be willing to hear other feedback.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much. I concur with Councillor Gregg. I'm very concerned that we get a report back. That's fine. It's additional work for staff, but it's just allowing this sort of thing. We have so many clubs in our community that if we exempt one club from paying taxes, then we're going to be getting requests, believe me, from every club in the community that they'll want their taxes exempted. So I cannot support asking staff to do a report, which I certainly won't support unless we
Okay.
I'm not sure what that's all about, but
No,
anyway.
that's not for that. That's
Okay, so there you go. I won't support the motion for a report.
okay. Councillor Lemon?
Well, I'm trying to remember, I don't think we ever granted a tax exemption to a curling club before. I believe the Great Granite Club paid full taxes. The many years it was in. I would ask clarification from the treasurer.
Mr. Ritchie?
Through your worship, that's correct. We have not granted this, we've never had this request in my time here, but I could certainly do a report for council so they understood the options for all athletic groups that may approach council in the future, and then fully understand exactly what they may be looking at and go from there. It won't take a tremendous amount of staff input at this time.
Okay. Any further discussion to that motion? Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the motion to get a report? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried then. Thank you. Down to number 12, which is reports. Councillor Thomas, did you have your hand up there? Sorry, I thought...
Yeah, sorry, Your
I thought
Worship.
your hand
I'm
went up.
wondering if we could move item 12C2 up. That's the minutes of the CPAC meeting.
Okay, anyone opposed to that? Okay, you're opposed?
In the interest of the agenda, I believe there's a few groups here that are waiting for, so if the DIA could do theirs first, perhaps we could move it forward after the DIA, because they're waiting too.
Sure.
Oh, no, you guys have got me really confused. Okay, so we're starting off with 12A1, which is a report from the Director of Financial Services with regard to the DIA, or Downtown Improvement Area budget. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The DIA 2015 operating budget is presented tonight for Council's approval. It was presented at the annual general meeting as required by statute. The levy on all DIA properties will total $235,000, which is unchanged virtually from the last 3 years. The manager of the DIA, as well as the board chair, is here to answer any questions should council have any.
Okay, Councillor O'Leary.
I'm going to move the recommendation, but first I just wanted to make a comment here on the DIA. I just wanted to mention that on the 18th of March, we as the DIA received a clean audit from the BDO. And I also wanted to remind council about the celebration that the DIA has on April 23rd. It's a Thursday night at the H2O Club, beginning at 5:30. And with that, I'll move the recommendation.
Great, thank you. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. This is 0% increase, so that's certainly a good budget and a good hard work by the committee. Question for Mr. Ritchie: the parking, the amount contributed for parking, for complimentary parking, I think that's what we're calling it, is less than what had been in the past. And I thought there was an agreement that it was $27,500.
Through your worship, it certainly has been negotiated the last number of years between the board and the city. The board feels in their budget process this year they could only contribute $25,000. I will mention it is now a budget line item, for lack of a better way to put it. Previously, they were drawing it out of reserves. So moving ahead, I would say it isn't what I had put in our budget, but it would just mean fewer dollars to work with in parking budget at the end of the year. But perhaps the board chair would wish to speak to this, but it isn't quite what we were looking for, but it's very close. It is in the budget now as a line item, so I believe it will be fairly stable from now until the future.
Sorry, and
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Ritchie, you said that the parking budget 2014 or 2013, I'm getting my years mixed up, was not in great shape. You're projecting a surplus this year?
That's correct, Your Worship, through you. Certainly the weather and the changeover of parking from, first of all, from the city over to police services and then from police services back to the city, along with an extremely poor winter, 2 winters in a row now, has affected our revenues in parking. However, the budget this year projects a surplus of, this year being 2015, of about $60,000. So, and I believe with Mr. Smith now administrating this process for us, that we will see some great improvements to our parking strategy.
Okay, done. Councillor Lemon.
Well, when this amount was originally levied, the city parking fund was in almost a deficit position, if I remember correctly. We were in really tough shape, and now things have improved. And I really think that we should support this change because otherwise I think we're opening a can of worms I don't think we want to open, because the city does not pay its share of the parking that it currently uses. So the DIA is certainly paying more than their fair share.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Worship. While we have the chair and the manager here, I hope it's okay that I bring forward my additional item on downtown storefronts.
Not right now. We've got a motion on the table. Just hold for 1 second, and we'll deal with the motion first so I don't get confused. Councillor Larry, I'm going to come back to you. You moved that, but when I look at the recommendation with the help of Madam Clerk, it is approval whole or in part of budget. I assume you're moving the budget in whole?
Correct.
Great. Everyone understands that? So any other comments with regard to that motion? If we can call the vote on that. Adopting or receiving the report and approving in whole the downtown improvement area budget. All in favor? That's carried. Now I'll come back to you, Councillor Kapke, just this once.
Thank you. I'll only speak once. My question is, what kinds of means do you have or parameters can you use regarding empty storefronts and how they maintain their storefront as far as paper falling off the windows, that kind of thing? Do you want to go to the podium?
I'll get you to come to the microphone and hit the button so the little red light comes on, and then everybody can hear you.
Your worship, esteemed city
Okay,
councilors.
sorry, I'll get you to push the button so that we can hear you, and then state who you are too, so everybody knows.
Your worship, esteemed city councilors, my name is David Parsons, chair of the DIA. In answer to the question about storefronts, they are independently owned. I can say, although it may be premature, that the DIA, in partnership with the Economic Development Committee, is looking at some answers to that. So I'll not say much about that. However, we certainly notice it ourselves to the point where we would like to see something happen. It is on our agenda to address it, and I'm just not sure how you get around to suggesting that you can't force owners to do something about it. We do have some plans in place such that working with others, I believe that we'll be able to see some positive changes in the not too distant future.
Thanks.
Okay?
As long as it's on their agenda, that's good.
It's right up there.
Thank you.
Along with parking, it's right up there.
Perfect, thank you. So we're done with 12A1 now. If I can jump with everyone's consent to 12C2, which is minutes from Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, meeting held April 2nd, 2015. Councillor Thomas.
Your worship, I'm wondering if we can extract item 7.1A, the Branningham Grove report, from those minutes to vote on it separately.
Okay, everyone in consent. Madam Clerk, we're not going amok yet. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to move that we table that report until our next meeting. The reason being that I do understand the property owner is coming to Owen Sound this week to meet with the Director of Community Services and discuss some of the issues surrounding that property. And I think that I certainly would be more comfortable having a little more information from the owner before we vote on the issue.
So your motion is to pull that out and table it to
Yes.
next council meeting. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just around timing, we have a 60-day clock ticking, I guess you'd say. This motion to table still meets within the 60-day timeframe for council to make a decision?
Through you, Your Worship, the application for demolition came in on March the 5th. That would give us to honor about May the 5th. Our next meeting is April 27th, so we would be able to bring it back before the deadline on May the 5th.
Okay, other questions? Okay, call the vote on that motion. All in favor? That is carried. Go ahead.
And then since we have this item on the table, can I move acceptance of the rest of those minutes?
And usually try and get them presented. Yeah, why don't we move them now, and then I may get the chair to present information from them later while we're going through for the sake of information, if I may. So Councillor Thomas's motion is to adopt the remainder of the minutes from the meeting. All in favor? That is carried. Good, thank you. So if I can go back to report 12A2, which is a report from the environmental superintendent with regard to household hazardous waste municipal participation agreements. Mr. Beck, I'm going to present that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship and members of council, the city has arrangements with 4 other surrounding municipalities to share in the costs of running household hazardous waste program. It's been very, very successful over the last number of years. In 2014, as an example, we received something in the order of 1,682 loads of household hazardous waste, which was up almost 10% from the preceding year. It's a very successful program that the city runs on behalf of all 5 municipalities. We collect an administration fee from each of the municipalities, as well as a fee per load from depending on the location of origin. So we know that, and there's a rebate scheme based on the amount that we receive in revenues back from the province, or from Stewardship Ontario, rather. We enter into agreements with those municipalities on an annual basis, and there's a requirement for there to be a bylaw to execute the agreement and authorize the mayor and the clerk to authorize.
Great. Okay, council. Anybody have questions, want to move it? Councillor Lemon?
I would certainly be pleased to move the recommendation that the city enter an agreement with our neighbors. Getting this household hazardous waste dealt with in a safe manner is very, very important and good for our environment. Just not here, but around us as well.
Okay, further discussion on that motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12A3 is a verbal or oral report from the Director of Operations with regard to frozen water services.
Yes, Your Worship. Council will have received a report from me earlier this evening with respect to a request to investigate further into the Ontario Disaster Relief Assistance Program, otherwise known as ODRAP. So I'll just quickly run through the key points. ODRAP is designed to assist municipalities and individuals for the recovery of damages as a result of natural disasters. The program is not a substitute for private insurance and the related those related costs. Owners of properties and infrastructure are required to, or expected to, have their own insurance and to utilize those to the maximum extent possible. The program is administered through MMAH, and through their regional offices they provide assistance to municipalities who may find themselves in the unfortunate position of having to seek assistance as a result of natural disasters. In order to receive assistance, a municipality must pass a resolution which outlines the nature of the disaster that was incurred and requesting assistance under the program. There is a draft resolution in the staff report which you can consider. In order for the city to be eligible, the city must be declared a disaster area by the minister, and then there's a reporting structure where all the details are provided with respect to the nature of the disaster as well as the costs incurred by the municipality. I won't get into the private side of it. Simply, it doesn't apply in our own individual circumstances that we're considering now. In reviewing the request, the minister will determine or consider the cause and extent of the damages sustained, the financial impact, the financial capacity of the municipality to absorb those costs, the ability to recover without support, and the future financial pressures that may be experienced by the municipality and how these might, how the current situation may affect the municipality's future ability to deal with its needs. Assuming that the minister were to find favorably with the city's request, then the two parties would enter into an agreement, and we would start generating reports on a regular basis of costs incurred and requesting compensation for. The report on page 7 and 8 gives an indication of the sorts of costs that could be recovered through the program, and there are quite a number of them. I think of particular interest in our situation would be the second to last, which is the repair and restoration to pre-disaster condition of uninsured public facilities, such as buildings, libraries, recreation facilities, roads, drains, and infrastructure. There are also, and I think in that one phrase, it's important for council to note that it says repair and restoration to pre-disaster condition. So you're not going to go from having a 100-year-old pipe to a brand-new pipe and get 100% of the cost. You're going to go from nothing to a 100-year-old pipe and you pay the difference. So it's certainly not, it's not a, I wouldn't call it an overly generous program, to say the least. There are a list of ineligible costs, so they're not going to pick up your ongoing operating expenses that may have somehow been associated with the completion of operations during the period in which you were responding to the disaster conditions. So that gives you a thumbnail, Your Worship, of the program and what it's the process to get involved. Under recommendations, I've provided council with a draft resolution for your consideration, and that's the end of my brief. If you have any questions, Your Worship, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. I want you to look at this because we originally looked at it and didn't think we qualified, but it just keeps adding up, and it's been, what, 6 weeks since we wrote to the province, and we got a nice letter back from the Premier saying, you sent a nice letter to the right party, and we haven't heard anything from the right department. We can't afford it. $1 million? Are we close to $1 million?
I would hazard to suggest, Your Worship, that we're over $1 million and counting.
And if they can give out free gift cards or something in Brampton for ICE a few years ago. Now, I realize that all happened at once and they lost electricity. We've lost a utility. We've got a provincial government that has ignored us for 6 years or 6 weeks after writing to them. I'm worried that we're getting closer to the end of having the big issues, and I think there is a 14-day limitation period that made me nervous about this disaster relief, and I thought we should look at it. If they're not going to respond in one way, then we maybe should be making the application. Council needs to decide that. Under disaster relief, we need help. There's no doubt about it. We need help, and it has accumulated a lot more from that first week or two that we looked at it and thought that we didn't qualify. Councillors, Councillor Lemon.
Well, in reading the financial and budget implications, a lot of the things that are here, we definitely qualify. Municipally owned equipment costs at 50% of the MTO rate. Well, I'd like it to be 100%, but 50% is better than nothing. I think that we definitely should go ahead and put some polite pressure on our provincial government, because they've put an awful lot of other less onerous disasters that we face and have faced. I mean, a lot of people are wondering when someday 10th Street may actually be 4 lanes from one side of the city to the other. There's been a lot of overtime, I'm sure. There's been a lot of extra costs. There's been a humongous amount of water that we've had to go through the system which we're not getting compensated. I mean, how do you spell disaster? Water is a disaster when it's not working properly, and I think we should perhaps go to write a letter directly to the Premier's office saying, excuse me, but we're part of Ontario. At least the last time I checked we were.
Should ignore the last letter. Councillor Dodd.
First off, I want to say thank you to the Director of Operations, Ken, for putting this together. I brought this up at our last meeting, and I'm more than thrilled to see that it's came through. One of the questions I did have is, do we know if there's any negative impacts if we're applying to this, like for any other future funding? I'm just thinking in general, if we agree to this and say classified as a disaster zone, is there any other negative impacts that could come from that?
Your worship, I would say the worst that can be said is no. I don't know of any negative consequences. In other words, are we, as a result of taking advantage of this program, are we then going to be disqualified from taking advantage of another program? I can't say categorically one way or the other, but I can't conceive of such a situation.
Councillor Dodd?
Well, and that's good to hear, because I think this is like as Councillor Lemon has earlier stated here, a lot of these things that we're going through are a lot of issues that we are currently facing. So I think it's something that it's worth it, worth the try. We've got $1 million racking up here on funding that's going to go into the water rate, and instead of just applying this onto the backs of the taxpayers or the water users, as what we may have to do in the end run, but we need to try to put something together and try to find a solution to this. So I think it's a really good move.
Okay, Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. So we sent a letter to the Premier, and she said, I'll forward this to the...
No, she noted that we had sent it to the appropriate ministry and said...
Environment. And just this afternoon, we received the email from the Minister of the Environment saying, yeah, it was just on our agenda right now. It just came up. Thank you for the letter. I noted that you've also, this matter falls under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, so I've sent it to the Honourable Mr. McMeekin, the Minister. So I don't know who he's going to send it to when he wants to pass the buck a little further down the line, but the cost is $1 million. There'll be more than that when we're all said and done. We had a reserve at budget time in our water reserves of about 1.1 million. That number was built up over many, many years of the small surpluses for doing work as needed. So after years of building up our surplus, it's wiped out in about, what's this, 3-4 months? 3 months. So I do support this resolution. Most people think of a disaster as a bang, an event hits and that's the disaster. I don't know what you call the slow motion disaster, but that's what this has been. Certainly it's been a disaster for a number of our residents, and financially, when this is all said and done, it took us many years to get 1.1 million. It took us 3 months to spend it.
And we're not done.
And we're not anywhere near done. So I certainly support going down this route, and hopefully we'll get some answers here.
So, Mr. Becking, there was people without water for 40 days? 35 days?
Yes, Your Worship. We, I believe, had individuals, they were a small number, but we did have some individuals that were into 5 and 6 weeks.
So it's got to qualify. Councillor Kepke?
My comment is, through you, Your Worship, to the director, are there still warnings out there to keep your water running?
Yes, Your Worship.
And have we resolved all of the issues yet?
I'll be speaking to those later, in my later verbal report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you. I believe we should be sending a copy of this to the Source Water Protection Act, because we've had trouble with, you've had to flush the water for so many days before people could drink it again?
Your Worship, no, that's not the case.
What was the case of contaminated water?
We've had to take precaution. When you replace a main or put in place a temporary service, you have to ensure that it's properly disinfected. So essentially what we do is we hypochlorinate or superchlorinate the pipe. In other words, we put in enough chlorine to kill any bug on the planet.
There really was never a problem?
No, there was never a problem, but before we can put these services back into commission, we have to superchlorinate them to make sure that they're completely disinfected. And then and only then, after we've received clear results from the laboratory, that we can then put the services back into service for human consumption.
Okay.
Councillor Dodd, back to you.
Just in conclusion to this, I would like to move the recommendation. Should I read it out?
No, it's several paragraphs.
Okay.
Well, if you want to, I shouldn't say no so
That's
quickly.
okay, that's okay.
You don't have to if you don't want to, it's several paragraphs. Is that more polite?
Okay, I'll take the polite route of saying, okay.
Given that motion
Yeah,
is
I'll move the
moved
recommendation.
to move the recommendation, but which is written out in the report that Mr. Becken gave us. Any other comments? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're down to 12A4, verbal report from Deputy Mayor, Grey County Council.
Thank you. Thank you very
Oops,
much.
Sorry, if we can hold on.
Sorry, we skipped over 12A3, which was supposed to be the verbal report from the Director of Operations on the frozen water services. This was his this was actually his additional item.
Additional item, okay, so we just did it backwards? He did it, okay. So if we can come, if we can come back, sorry about that, if we can come back to 12A3. So this is your verbal report on frozen water services. Now you can answer Councillor Kepke's questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next slide, Jax. Okay, I'm pleased to report that everybody in the city now has water. As of last Monday, we were able to connect all of the individuals back onto the city's water system, either through a temporary or a permanent connection. Next slide, please. The run water advisory is still in effect, and the reason for that is the temperatures of the water coming out of the bay and the temperatures of the water coming out of the system. That having been said, I think we need to start looking at whether or not to lift those advisories. Next. At present, we still have at least 2 significant locations where we have split water mains that will have to be reinstated. Those are 5th Avenue East and 6th Avenue West. We have a number of other locations where we have strong suspicions that in fact we may have to replace even more mains. The only reason why we haven't is because frankly they haven't caused us an operational problem and they could sit. And it was simply a triage approach to triaging the problems that we've had. Next. As I indicated, we topped out at 319 and service was fully restored on April 6th. Next. For the month of April thus far, the blue line represents current water demand at the plant, and I've managed to pull up some statistics from the preceding 2 years, and you can see how we are still about 4,000 cubic meters a day above the demand in preceding years. I would say that 2013 was pretty close to an average. Long story short, yes, while we are still significantly above what would be considered normal day demands, we are still well below peak capacity of the plant and well within acceptable parameters. Next. This is a new slide that you haven't seen before. What I'm illustrating here is temperatures of the water in various locations throughout the distribution system. I'll draw particular attention to the very first point at the left-hand side of the graph. That is the raw water temperature coming into the intake from the bay. Up until fairly recently, we've been running around slightly above 1 degree Celsius. In the last set of samples, which were taken on the 7th, it's gone up to 2.1 degrees. So we're starting to warm up. That having been said, even in the middle of summer, we're only about 5 or 6 degrees above 0. So, you know, we're a third of the way to our peak. So don't discount that number, I guess is the caution I'm giving you. The rest of the points in the graph are temperatures throughout the various system and throughout the distribution system, and I've indicated the locations across the bottom. For whatever reason, King's Service Center, the second to last set of data points, seems to be abnormally cool, but be that as it may. You can see that we're getting consistent temperatures above 4 degrees C for the most part throughout the distribution system. I think it's important that we watch the temperatures and lift the run water advisories when it's appropriate to do so. Owen Sound was the hardest hit of all the municipalities in the, what I'll call the broader Georgian Bay area. At the present time, 2 municipalities have lifted their run water advisories, and 1 has still got their advisory in place. Staff are watching these graphs on a daily basis, and we'll make a determination when we feel it's appropriate to lift those. My concern is that I want the public to have confidence that we are doing our job, and we're not asking them to do something that is not reasonable in the circumstances. We've got a bond of trust that we have to carry on with. Next point. So, what are our next steps? As I've just indicated, rescind the run water advisories when appropriate to do so. We are continuing to isolate mains and repair the damages. But we're starting to get into some of the bigger ticket items. We've been running on the build then design philosophy up to this point, simply because we've had no choice. We're now getting our head above water, so it's time to take a more thoughtful look at things and look at it in a more conventional way, which is design it first, then build it. Restoration of road cuts. I just signed off on a PO this afternoon that will see the road cuts permanently restored over the course of the next couple of weeks. The estimated cost, for council's information, was $187,000. Permanent restoration of services. Right now, of the 320-odd individuals who are running water on a temporary system, we've recovered about 80 to 100. But there are still quite a number who are frozen, and quite frankly, we can go out and spend all kinds of money chasing it and not achieve very much, so we'll let Mother Nature, everybody's got water, and that's the important bit, let Mother Nature take care of the rest of it. And then finally, return to normal operations and get on with the annual work program. And obviously, we'll want to take stock of how we've performed over the last 3 months. What did we do right? What did we do not so right? And how can we improve? And that'll be the preparation step, quite frankly, for next year.
Councillor Kepke had a question earlier. No, that just got covered. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Becking, that number you just mentioned, 187,000 for, is that pavement, repaving? Is that what you mean? And is that?
That's correct.
That's all of it, including the big chunks on 10th Street?
Well, that's just what's open right now. That doesn't address any additional works that we're working on right at the moment. Those are based on the estimated quantities for the areas that you can see are gravel right at the moment.
And so the discussion on, say, 10th Street up near West Hill, several road cuts, there's that gravel part.
Yes.
You're saying that 187 number just includes just the gravel, the road will stay?
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's an all-encompassing number. It covers off all of the works that we've disturbed to date.
Right, so is it, just as that example, would it be your intent that that entire section would get paved?
No, we'll pave half of the roadway that currently is quote-unquote gravel, and we will do a permanent restoration on service connections across the roadway, but it will not repave the entire section of road between 7th and 8th.
Okay. And in a few minutes, we're going to discuss in the operations minutes, the paving budget for this year. How do you anticipate that affecting, that discussion we just had affecting the discussion we're going to have in a few minutes around the paving budget, the $100,000 in the paving budget?
Well, quite frankly, the $100,000 in the paving budget would be the first place I'd go looking for money to pay for the 187 that we just agreed to pay.
So that'll come up later in the agenda? You guys are jumping all over the agenda on me tonight, and I can't keep up.
No, Your Worship, I think the councillor raised a very valid point. You know, with all of the best of intentions, I think council tried to do the right thing through the budgetary process to put monies aside for appropriate rehabilitation of our pavement infrastructure. But, you know, Mother Nature conspired against us, quite frankly.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Becking, I've been getting lots of positive feedback on our water crew and how hard they're working. The Sutherland's crew, from business operators that they're knocking on their door trying to figure out when the restaurants that needed water in the morning, restaurants that needed water at night, and going in and shutting off at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure that everyone's business got to go, and how thrilled those business operators were. Boy, it's been pretty amazing, and we can't thank the staff and the contract staff that have come in to help. It's been pretty amazing.
They truly have done a stupendous job, Your Worship, and council's gratitude has been passed on to them, because they really have done an outstanding job for us over the course of the last couple of months.
Great, thank you. I don't need a motion to receive that, do I? No, okay, so then Councillor Deputy Mayor Wright, with regard to the Grey County Council, if you want to give us the update.
This will be a very quick update. I think most of us are aware that of the two things that happened at County Council. We had two delegations there. We had McSweeney and Associates. They brought the completed and economic development strategy. This was built around Grey County's core strengths, focused on the premise that people and process will lead to economic development success, and to target specific ready activities where county can have the biggest impact on creating an investment-friendly and ready environment, and that's for the entire county. And staff has been directed to finalize the implementation plan, outlining the priorities and the next steps for initiating the action items. The second delegation then was from the Benton Group, and this was to complete the architectural drawings for the proposed addition and renovation to the county administration building. This was debated on for about an hour and a half, because the council certainly had a lot of questions about it. It's about an $11 million cost. The county has been saving for the last, putting money away for the last 5 years for this addition. And the cost of the addition is about a 0.70% on the mill rate if it went that way. During that discussion, our mayor body asked if the city could meet with the county to talk about perhaps the needs of the city could be met up at the county building. That was a possibility, and I'm interested in hearing what Councillor Thomas will have to say about that later. The under corporate services, there was a 2% wage increase given out to the non-union members, about 143 of them, I believe. In planning, we approved the delay, if you recall, that the Office Street project that's come to the city, the condo units up there. The county approved a delay in the development charges until there was an occupancy permit issued by the city. And that was a good step for the city to get that through. And then there were 3 new ambulances approved. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Wright? No? Good, thank you. So we're down to 12B, which is a consent agenda. Ms. Bloomfield, do you want to do a run-through on what's there?
Through you, Your Worship, on the consent agenda is 2 reports from the Facilities Booking Coordinator, one respecting the Jordan Bay Folk Society 40th Annual Summer Folk Music and Craft Festival, and one respecting requirements of the city for licensed event held by the Owen Sound Agricultural Society in the Barns at Victoria Park. Also on the consent agenda is planning notices where no report is triggered, minutes for receipt from the library board, and correspondence received which is presented for the information of council.
Great. Someone want to move, we're doing receipt of. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move receipt of the consent agenda, and hopefully the chair of library may just give us a little summary of those minutes.
Oh, thank you. I missed that. Councillor O'Leary?
I had a question on the Summerfolk report. A couple of questions, actually. On number 3 of the recommendation, approving the extension of the hours of operation of the event, including the beer tent, to 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. So does that mean there's no beer tent on the Thursday? Or
Through you, Your Worship, there is a licensed event on Thursday and Sunday, except they don't need an extension to the hours of operation. The noise bylaw is also extended till 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday evenings, but not required Thursday and Sunday.
Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering about number 5, if there should be a discussion on the Folk Society asking us to waive the setup and tear down of the fee associated with the event.
Through you, Your Worship, this is the first time that their summer folk has been charged a fee. The fees and charges bylaw does include a charge for setup and tear down days at Kelso Beach Park. It's $25 a day for a nonprofit, so their fee for that is $200 because they have a number of days of setup and tear down. So in addition to their total fee, which is $1,277, they're asking council to consider waiving the $200 setup and tear down fee.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, like, do I need a motion? Because I am not in favor of waiving that fee. I think it's just, that's a cost that needs to be paid, and I would not be in favor of waiving it.
Through you, Your Worship, we are looking for direction with respect to item 5 in the recommendation in terms of that fee for setup and tear down.
I would move then that, that we do not waive that fee.
I'm just going back to look at the recommendation. Are you moving the recommendation otherwise with?
Well, first of all, I think we have a motion already, correct? So I might be jumping the gun here.
Your Worship, I could
sorry.
change my motion to be save and accept item 5 contained within that report. Does that work for you, Madam Clerk?
Yeah. Does that work? Okay, any discussion on that? So all in favor of the motion, so we've just pulled 5 and then we're going to deal with 5 next. So all in favor of the motion to move the recommendation with the exception of number 5. And that's carried. Okay, now if we can go back to number 5, Councillor O'Leary.
And I would move that we do not support waiving that fee.
Okay. And further discussion, Councillor Dodd?
Is this the first year that they've asked for this condition of waiving the fee, or has this been something that we have done in previous years?
This was a change to the fees and charges bylaw that this council approved. So at the time, we did advise Summerfolk of the change to the bylaw. So in previous years, they had those 8 days, 5 days of setup, 3 days of tear down at no charge. We had recommended to council as part of the fees and charges bylaw, there be a small charge for those days. So this is the first time that they're being required to pay it.
Councillor Thomas?
I'm not going to support the motion. Having been around this council chamber for many, many years, I remember the olden days when every year Summerfolk came to City Council to look for a grant to just put the festival on. And I think they've done a wonderful job over the years turning it into a viable enterprise that pays for itself and does not rely typically on anything from the city, with the exception of, I know there's some in-kind stuff, and we do some work for them down on the site. But that said, and I know it's only $200, but I really feel that for the Folk Society, sometimes it can be real nip and tuck whether a festival makes money or doesn't make money, and I think this is a very small way in which we can support them as a council.
Councillor O'Leary?
I appreciate your big heart, but there's going to be hundreds of times that we're going to be asked to waive fees for different groups, and, you know, I'm not against Summer Folk. I think it's great. I think they've added another night this year. Is this the first year it's Thursday? So it's just, you know, it's getting bigger. If it costs us money to clean it up or tear down, so be it.
Okay, anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Gregg?
I will not support the motion. I think that there's already a facility rental fee that they are acknowledging is reasonable and that they will pay. I think it's reasonable that they do need some days to bookend the event, and I don't think this new fee should be charged to the Summer Folk for the amount of benefit they provide for our community. I won't support that motion. Thanks.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you. I will become with some surprise. I do support the motion. I think, of course, they're a great group. Same discussion we have all the time. We talked at budget about making tough decisions. It's not all at one time. It's decisions like this each and every meeting. So they'll have 8 days plus 4 for the festival. That's 12 days. If you look at total $1,400 to use the entire park for 12 days, I think it's more than reasonable.
Okay, and Councillor Lemon, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did, Your Worship. I feel it wasn't that many years ago when Summer Folk was in deep trouble. It provides a huge impact on our community. And yeah, we need the money, but we also need the events. So, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I really feel that that's a small price to pay for an excellent event.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All in favor of Councillor O'Leary's motion, which was not to waive the $200 charge for Summer Folk? All in favor? 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is defeated. Do I need a subsequent motion then to? No. Okay. Now, just to make sure, Councillor Kepke moved all of the consent agenda with the exception of that one item. Okay. So it wasn't just the.
It was just that one particular item in the report, but you wanted to do say accept that.
Okay. Okay. Well, one.
Yes, we're okay then.
We're okay.
I don't believe we are, because we haven't made a decision on item 5. Is that correct?
Okay.
The decision was to not waive the fee, so then the opposite works, okay.
Yeah. And otherwise, then we have moved all of the consent, so we're covered off. And Councillor Thomas is going to give us a little verbal report on the library minutes.
I sure will.
Thanks.
The library minutes that we have before us are from February the 26th, which was the first full meeting of the new board with all its new membership. We're trying a little experiment at the library, and we're counting things a little bit differently now, and I'm just trying to find the appropriate spot in my agenda here. Typically, the monthly performance report counted certain things but not others, and so what we've done is we've tried changing the performance report to reflect every interaction that a library staff member has with an item or a member of the public, every action they perform in their daily job. And it was quite instructive. In the month of January, there were 80,968 services performed for customers during that month of the library service. Just to give you an idea of what that means, there were 15,600 people through the library in January, and almost 25,000 items circulated out to the members of the public. So it's really interesting when you start looking at the volume that goes on at the library. You can now download magazines to your digital device using your library card, and that's a new change that we've got. There are 132 magazines. 132 were downloaded in January during our soft launch. That's what happened. And that was really it for our first meeting. Everybody was just kind of getting to know one another, and there weren't a lot of committee reports.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
I have a question, if I could, through you, Your
please.
Worship. The seed library, is that really what I think it is?
That is exactly what you think it is. It's seeds, and they are in the process of putting together a seed library, in which case you'll be able to go in and borrow seeds from the library.
How do you repay them or bring them?
Well, I think you bring seeds back when you've planted and harvested. You return seeds to the library, and it's just a little experiment. For many years, programming at the library tended to fall to the side with all of the other business that we had to do there, and there's been a real effort on the part of staff to bring more programming back to the library, to give people more reasons and to create more relevance to our community from the library.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, I think we're down to 12C, which is minutes of the Bylaw Committee meeting held April 1st. Councillor Kepke, you want to
Thank you,
present
Your
those?
Worship. Just a brief summary of the minutes of the Bylaw Committee. Other than some correspondence, there were 3 reports that have been circulated to Council for consideration, one being the flag flying and proclamations policy. And if there are questions to these, Mr. Smith or myself will certainly attempt to answer those questions. The second being appointment officers bylaw, and the third being a set fines audit. Each of those are requiring Council's approval of the contents of those reports. So if there are questions, fire away.
It seems to me that I had one that it referred to a report being attached that maybe wasn't attached.
They were, thank you, Worship, they were sent out today. The reports were, so that councilors could have a look at them, and hopefully they've had time to have a look at them. I do have paper copies here,
No, but
that's required, but I would move the approval of the minutes and the recommendations contained in those reports.
If you don't mind, can you give me a verbal, since I didn't see the report today, on flag flying proclamation, if
Okay.
it's amended or what the amendments are, just so we understand it?
The flag flying policy was amended to include a flag at the Corporal Robert T. James Mitchell Park, flown at half-mast on October 3rd each year during CVFR Meaford Unit's memorial visit, and on December 28th each year for a 1-hour period.
Okay, great. So are you moving
I
adoption
am.
of those minutes?
Yes.
And any other questions? All in favor? Carried? Great, thank you. Minutes of Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting held on April 2nd, although we've already dealt with them in minutes. I wonder if the chair wants to give us a quick overview of the things that weren't passed tonight, or were passed tonight.
Most certainly. Thank you, Mayor Body. We had a couple applications through the facade and structural improvement program, which were both approved, one for the Casero kitchen table, and the second for residential property on 8th Street West. This is a program that has a $40,000 budget, and $44.67 had been thus paid in 2015, and the committee recommendations were for approximately $6,800 being approved under the facade and structural program. We also had a report entailing that within the Heritage Property Tax Relief Program, the qualified refund amounts have surpassed the budget allocation. Financial Services is able to issue the refunds on a prorated basis. So what that means is if we were able to satisfy the full amount of tax relief or qualified tax relief within our program, we would have to increase that budget allotment moving forward. But I would read into that that's a program that's working and it's a success and a benefit, and people are investing in their heritage properties, maybe because of that program. We also had, for the first time now, looked at a First Friday, Saturday initiative. This comes forth somewhat from the DIA, but also as a grassroots movement by merchants in our downtown. It is a program which would extend from May to October, which would encompass 6 Fridays. It would, in hopes it would build upon the success of a First Friday, which was launched and trialed last December before Christmas, allowing businesses to stay open later, hoping for increased participation. And as aside from that, streets bylaw and zoning bylaw were reviewed by staff just to really establish any parameters on what would be hoped to be a solid success. There is limitations on alcohol on patios, and that would be still falling under the alcohol gaming part of the legislation for any planning approvals for anybody that was wishing for outdoor patios that served alcohol. That's outside of the streets bylaw or the street furniture bylaw, which was reviewed. Sidewalk patio or streets bylaw and street furniture bylaws are really allowing staff the opportunity to address any concerns that they would have, that merchants should have for street patios and or merchandising, if they're wishing to perhaps sell or have furniture, or could be flowers, could be pots, pot holders, various furniture accentuating or alongside their business. It would only be within the DIA, the Downtown Improvement borders, and it does have a reasonable checklist was developed to assist businesses in applying or in their application. So it's a straightforward looking process, and I think the hope here is that this can be a real success and have some traction moving forward for downtown.
Great. Any questions? So, Councillor Gregg, you're moving.
I think we already moved them.
Sorry, yeah, thanks. So 12C3 is minutes from Economic Development Tourism Advisory.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Through you, in approving these minutes tonight, you will be approving some changes to the structure of the Economic Development Committee. Where this came from, there are actually 18 voting members on that committee, and it was becoming very, very difficult for the group to make quorum at their meetings. So what we've suggested is 6 of the members were members from community groups who participate in in a resource capacity. So we've asked them to sit as resource people. They'll still come to the meetings, but there'll just be 11 voting members on the committee, the representatives from our council and our public appointees. That'll mean that we have to have 6 people for quorum instead of 11 or 10, and I think that that'll make it much easier to get some business done. The other key change that we've made is we will now be going to a manager's report format. So rather than spending much of the meeting listening to reports and talking about them, the manager will give us a summary, a 10 or 15 minute summary of activities at the start of the meeting, which will clear a little bit more room for the committee to undertake some brainstorming and development of possibilities for the community as we search for new ways to build assessment and move forward economically. And I would move those minutes.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you. So just so we're clear, the only members after these minutes pass would be the ones appointed by council. All of those others It would just be advisory. The school board, college, those.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12C4, Minutes of Operations Advisory Committee, March 25th, 2015.
Thank you, Your Worship. A number of items on here that will be of interest to council. The waste management contract, as you'll see, the committee discussed that. Our waste collection, our transfer station, waste disposal, and the recycling contract all come due May 31st, 2016. All three of our, we sort of timed it that way so we'd have them all coming together at the same time. The committee is recommending, we do have some time, it's good that we're not, we have some lead time here, that we issue an RFP for all three of waste disposal, waste collection, and recycling. If these minutes are passed, that RFP would go out to the different possible companies. The one addition to that is that we would ask for a cost on source separator organics as part of that waste collection RFP. As we know from past reports, that's a fairly expensive initiative, but it was felt by the committee that we should at least get a number for it. Let's look at what it's going to cost. As I said, it will be expensive, but at least then we'll know what we're dealing with as far as cost goes. At the meeting, we also discussed the different detours, which everybody has seen the signs around town. 3rd Avenue East reconstruction is starting, and the 8th Street Hill reconstruction is starting. There's detour signs all over the place. It's going to be a summer of construction. The only thing I'd say on 3rd Avenue East, the first phase is to do that intersection at 3rd Avenue East and East Bayshore Road on the way to Hobart's there. Do that intersection first. When that's completed, then do the rest of 3rd Avenue from the Bayshore to that intersection. So that road will be closed for most of the summer. People will have to reroute up around 9th Avenue, up near Notre Dame School, and down Malibu Hill. 8th Street, as you've seen, that's already under construction. They were ripping up the pavement today. So and that also, both affects our transit routes, so people should be aware. Go to our website and you'll see the deviations in the transit route as it goes along. We also discussed a very interesting topic on our asphalt program, resurfacing program. A number of years ago, staff did up a list of all of the sections of street. We have 650 road sections in the city. That can be a street, that could be long, short, but just for these purposes, 650 sections. In 2013, 180 of those were in a poor, failed, or at-risk condition, according to a staff assessment. So keep that in mind. 180 out of 650 were in poor, failed, or at risk of pavement condition. That was 2 years ago, last winter and this winter. I don't know what that 180 number is now, but I think it's safe to say more than 180. We asked staff, as everyone knows, we just had a small discussion about this. At budget, we set $100,000 aside for asphalt resurfacing this year. So out of that list of 180 plus, staff came up with a top 10 list of the worst streets in staff's opinion. That $100,000 manages to knock 2 off the list. So 650 road sections, 180 in terrible condition, top 10 list, enough money for 2. So at the current rate of spending on our asphalt program, and I'm assuming the number is 180 right now. It's probably more like, you pick 250-ish. We're well over 100 years before all the streets that are in poor, at-risk, or failed condition will get paved. And then what will those streets that are currently in good condition look like when we're dealing with all of these? The point here I'm trying to get across is that, and we just heard Mr. Becking say, well, we will approve these minutes here tonight. At some point, there will be a report coming from Mr. Becking and Mr. Ritchie on how are we going to pay for some of this water damage that's gone on. And so I was all set to announce the 2 road sections we were going to pave, because at least those two streets would be happy. But I'm afraid we may want to just, this is approved, but, you know, the budget is a fluid thing, and we'll have to just see where it ends up. So my point being, our asphalt resurfacing program is in a state of disrepair. It's in a state of, if it's not a critical issue, it's soon going to be one. We're talking millions of dollars in asphalt resurfacing that's required just to get us up to a standard that I think we'd all consider a fair standard. I'm not even saying good. So, after this winter, after the water work discussion is had, and we see some budget numbers, and we'll decide how we're going to allocate budget to fill in different spaces, I guess we'll have a discussion at that point if we're going to be able to do these two road sections or not. But we need a much larger discussion on how are we going to tackle the deficit in our roads paving budget. It's millions of dollars. I'm not sure how we're going to get there, but I guess the first thing is to identify, understand what the problem is, that you have a problem, what is the problem, and we'll go from there. So, on that happy note, there were a few other items in here, but I think that captures most of the minutes, and if there's any questions, but I would move the adoption of those minutes, Your Worship.
Okay, questions for Councillor McManaman? Any? Seeing none. All in favor of? Carried. Thank you. So the last one in this section is 12C, 5 minutes of wastewater treatment.
And thank you, Your Worship. The project is on schedule and on budget according to our revised schedule. You'll recall at the last set of minutes we had to revise the schedule slightly due to some weather concerns over the winter. But a question for Mr. Becking. One of the items, the critical path item right now is the biosolid storage tank. And what is the status of that?
Unfortunately, I've got a little bit of bad news. The last panel was improperly manufactured and has to be remanufactured, and we are going to be delayed about 3 weeks as a result of it. It's not because of anything within the contractor's control. It's simply an error in fabrication, and as a consequence of that, the contractor has been delayed on that critical path item. That having been said, there are lots of other things for the contractor to be doing so he can advance other items that are not currently on the critical path but will at some point in the future end up on the critical path. So I'm not overly concerned. The contractor is making every effort to deal with the last plate. It's the last out of, I don't know how many there are, 200 or 300 plates in the wall of the tank. It's the one and only one that there was an error, and it's the one that's the last. So nonetheless, the contractor continues to make good progress, and I have to say that I'm very pleased with the quality and the caliber of the work that is being done. So it's not an ill wind that doesn't blow some good.
And so if I might, that one item, though, should not delay the schedule. They're just shifting things around. It's not adding 3 weeks to the schedule.
No, I don't believe that that's the case, and the contractor has already acknowledged that he needs to kick things into high gear in order to make up not only for this problem, but also he acknowledges that the city has been more than fair with him in terms of weather delays and other things, so he's going to be redoubling his efforts to gain back some ground.
Good, thank you. Just the other two items, committee had some renderings of the facility. It'll be using all Shouldice block stone in the products in the building, and that actually comes in at a cost savings from the original budget of $51,000, so that's good news. And the last item was we are adding an additional inspector over the 10-month period of critical 10 months of certain parts of the construction. That will add a cost, of course, but that is taken within the engineering contingency budget. There's $500,000 in there for engineering type items. This is one that was felt was very necessary to have, for 10 months, to have an additional inspector on site. But as I said, that will be covered within the contingency engineering fund. Other than that, that's all those minutes, Your Worship, and I would move the adoption of them.
Okay, any questions for Councillor McManaman on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Great, thank you. So that gets us through 12C. If I can jump back to 12B1, which is the Folk Society again, and we'll go back and look at 5. Councillor Kepke, I think you want to make a motion that we waive the fees? Isn't that?
That's correct.
We're just, we
I
checked
didn't
and
think
maybe
it was cleaned up, and I thought it
just to
probably
make
had
sure
to have something.
everyone understands that. So it's the reverse of Councillor O'Leary's motion earlier that we're now moving to waive, just to make sure we've got the
Just the $200.
$200 fee. All in favor? And that's carried. Jim, you voted? Oh, you opposed that, okay. Sorry, so it is carried. Now we're down to 12D, which is minutes from in-camera meeting for approval. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wright. So that's a meeting held on March 30th, 2015. All in favor? Carried. Number 13 is other business, and I think starting with Councillor Kepke with regard to transit.
Specialized transit, Your Worship, thank you. I wanted to ask staff, what is different now than before? Because we're getting a lot of concerns from people who are not able to get on the specialized transit that were able to use it before. And it's not just the one letter that we received as a council. I've had other people call me.
Your Worship, I'm not fully aware of how severe the situation is. I gather that there have been complaints about the availability of space on the bus, and I've asked the contractor to keep records of when they've had to refuse service to a client, prospective client. We'll look at the nature of those complaints and see what can be done. It may be a matter of simply having to ask people to be more flexible in terms of their schedule, and that may be part of it. Part of it may be a capacity issue, and if that's the case, then we'll have to look at ways to deal with the capacity issue.
Is the capacity different now than it was before?
I don't believe so, no.
Perhaps the manager.
Ms. Corsi may have the answer.
Council, some of you may recall that in order to meet accessibility criteria, we have to have equal fares for both specialized and non-specialized. That's increased the demand for specialized transit, so we certainly have to keep an eye on it, and we may have to provide increased levels of service for that particular use.
Because the concerns that I've been receiving are people that used to be able to get on the transit that are unable to use our new buses at all because of blindness or other types of disabilities, and they're not able to get on this bus because there's no times for them to get on.
So it is just for clarification, it is a scheduling time issue?
It's a matter of the individual not being able to get to their appointments when they need to, yes.
So we could provide a report back?
Good.
Sorry, I had a second item.
Yeah.
Heat in the Bayshore rooms. Concerns from the people who play bridge in the one room that's what I call part of the Christie Hare rooms. I don't know what they're called now, but it's the inner one. That the heat will come on, but then the next time it comes on, it's cold. And is there a problem there in that building?
I'm not aware of any issues, Your Worship, but we'll certainly investigate, and I'll report back to council.
We had a very icy economic development meeting there that when we turned up the heat, it got colder. On one of those cold days, it seemed to be getting worse, and they came in and looked at it, but it may need some attention.
I'll speak to the manager and make sure that the situation gets rectified, Your
Great.
Worship.
Thank you. That's your items. Councillor Lemon, BCK.
Just one other thing, Your Worship. Councillor Kepke raised the issue of accessibility on the transit system. There was a motion passed at the Accessibility Committee asking for information on how many people are turned down, and that was done. That's got to be a month ago or so. Is that report almost ready?
Through you, Your Worship, those minutes from accessibility came to council. Council pulled a number of those resolutions out of the accessibility minutes, and they were referred to operations. So Mr. Becking and his group does have those, and I know there is wording in the contract about monitoring use and uptake of the accessible transit. So I'm sure Mr. Becking's group is working on that.
Okay, because the problem with the accessible transit started last year when we were getting all the bus breakdowns. It started to amplify. And the availability, I know of at least one person who has severe leg issues who just gave up trying to get a bus. And the problem is if you make a doctor's appointment, it's at a certain time. It's not something you have a lot of control over. And I think we've got to really start looking at that seriously because we are running into problems. But that's just commenting on that. Hopefully we will hear from operations on that report that was requested, because that information would give you a picture.
Councillor Lemon, we covered that. You raised BCK. I'm sorry. Can we
Yes, and that's what I'm just going to get to.
Good, thank you.
My issue with BCK is it's now spring, and last year we were told that something would happen this year, being 2015, to alleviate the problem of the ponding and the weed upgrowth in the center of that. My concern is if they don't get it soon, the Canada geese will have nested and we'll go another year of weeds. Can I find out what the status is of that?
If I could, Your Worship, we'll certainly contact the owner on that matter, and I'll check with the bylaw contingent to see what's happened.
Okay, it's just that you have a narrow time frame.
Understand that. If you could go out there and chase the geese away, that would be great.
Well, I'm right on the landing pattern, and they fly over my house early in the morning and late in the evening.
On the flight path. Councillor Thomas had 3 items.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to let people know that the annual screening of the Grey Bruce Youth Film Festival is coming up next Monday, the 20th, from 5:30 till 7:15 p.m. at the Galaxy Cinemas. And this year, there are 13 short films that have been created by young people from across Grey and Bruce counties competing for the big prize in the film festival. And I've seen most of the entries now, and there are a couple that are very, very good, very impressive. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention. The second item I had was also next Monday. There is from 9:30 until 4 o'clock a food entrepreneurship course being run up at Georgian College, and the city, through its economic development department, is a partner in promoting this event, and the seminar focuses on helping local food and beverage entrepreneurs and aspiring artisan food producers, which I fully approve, understand how to cultivate a successful food business. So that is open to anyone living in the community, and I highly recommend it if anyone is watching and has always wanted to set up their own food business. This would be the way to start. The third item I have tonight, I laughed when Councillor Wright mentioned that at the county last week you suggested that maybe we should look at moving our city hall up there, because I had exactly the same idea independent of you. And do you know, in March we had a report come forward from operations on the state of this city hall, and you know, the prices ranged from just under $3 million to up to $12 million to deal with the issues that we've got here. And I'd like to put a motion on the floor tonight that city staff approach Grey County Council and have a conversation about the possibility of getting involved in their build with an eye towards moving the city administration to the Grey County building.
That actually came up during the election and then a couple of times since, but that's, the county is spending the money. They're developing a building. They've been in there since 1960. The core of their building is a very solid, good building. It needs to be updated, obviously. Social services and so many things have grown that the building is no longer adequate for them, so they're talking about putting in 2 floors to the east or out the back of the building, with the possibility of going up floors if they needed to. We're 4 years behind them as far as the building goes, but in the same situation that they're in. Georgian Bluffs also needs a new building, but I think they're going to go ahead with their own no matter what we arrange. But I think there is some chances to at least look at and see if there's some savings to be had in one way or another if we built a building together. And it would be at that location if we were going to look at that. Ms. Corsi?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just, I know one of the questions that the county may ask of us is that whether we have any funds to help with the analysis. And clearly, I don't have an identified budget for that.
Councillor Thomas?
I think if we at least start the conversation, I mean, the report we received from staff last month indicates that there's some pretty serious work that needs to be done pretty soon here. So one way or the other, we're going to have to be coming up with funds as a council to either deal with this building or to do something else. So, you know, I think that when you're already building something, it's not too much more expensive to just build more of it when you've got everybody on site, as opposed to doing a build from the ground up and starting over. So at least a conversation might shed some light on that.
Okay, and so to that motion, discussion, Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much. I certainly support the city taking a look at that. The report that we got back suggested setting up a committee, and I'm sorry that we didn't get that committee set up, because that committee could be working along to find out other ways. There's all kinds of innovative things that we can do as a city hall. It doesn't have to be a city hall here. We could have lots of ideas. We could use the council chambers up there. We could have a storefront for walk-in to service City Hall, and we could have an addition perhaps up there or somewhere for the rest of our staff. There's all kind, but we need to get that committee set up to discuss that. And I understand from our motion from the last council that we were getting another report back on this about the couple of reports that we'd had a while ago, and that we would then look at setting up that committee. So I would like to see that come back and the committee set up and then go from there. But I certainly support what we're thinking about.
Councillor O'Leary?
I will support the motion. I think we should all think outside of the box, and I think that's a real good suggestion. It's only a discussion.
Other discussion?
Then, I'm hearing, let's set up the council committee, and I'm hearing staff go talk to the county. So I guess I'm kind of asking, which one do you want me to do?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, the motion I have on the floor is for staff to approach the county and begin the discussion just to see whether there's a possibility there or not.
Yeah, that's the first step.
Yep. Good, okay. Other discussion? All in favor? It's carried unanimously. Good, thank you. Those are all your items. Mr. Becking, you had one, but we already covered it with the report that was on the desk. So I think we've completed other business, so we're down to number 14, and we don't move ahead with number 14. So council is going back in camera to discuss items that are still on the agenda, and we'll proceed from there. So we're done up here in front of cable TV for now. I was going to say if we could maybe take 10 minutes until we're down there. Give everybody a bit of time. Sure. Great, thanks.